A message, hidden in cosmic noise. For decades, it was treated as background, dismissed as meaningless static generated by distance, interference, and imperfect instruments. Yet buried within that noise was something that refused to disappear. It did not announce itself clearly or repeat on command, but it persisted just enough to suggest that randomness might not be the whole story. To understand why this possibility still unsettles scientists today, we need to look at how humanity listens to the universe. Space is loud in ways that defy intuition, filled with radiation, electromagnetic interference, and overlapping signals from countless sources. Modern astronomy depends on filtering this chaos, stripping away what appears irrelevant to reveal patterns that align with expectation. What remains is assumed to be signal, while everything else becomes noise. That assumption has shaped decades of discovery. As instruments grew more sensitive, the volume of data exploded, forcing reliance on automated systems to decide what mattered and what could be ignored. These systems were trained to recognize familiar signatures, reinforcing known phenomena, while quietly discarding anomalies that did not fit established profiles. Efficiency demanded selectivity, and selectivity created blind spots. Within those blind spots, something lingered. Researchers reviewing archival data noticed irregularities that resisted clean classification. The patterns were faint, inconsistent, and easily lost among stronger signals, yet they appeared across different instruments and observation periods. Individually, they seemed insignificant. Together, they hinted at structure where randomness was expected. What made the discovery unsettling was not clarity, but persistence. The noise did not resolve into a message, nor did it vanish under scrutiny. It simply remained, challenging the assumption that everything unrecognized must be meaningless, and raising a question that would not go away. What if the universe has been speaking all along, and we have been filtering out the parts we do not yet know how to hear? As attention turned toward these irregular patterns, researchers approached them with caution, because history had taught that most anomalies eventually collapse into mundane explanations. Data pipelines were re-examined, calibration methods reviewed, and noise models refined to ensure the signals were not artifacts introduced by instruments or processing shortcuts. Each adjustment reduced uncertainty, yet the patterns persisted, slipping through every attempt to erase them completely. What complicated the investigation was scale. The irregularities did not appear as a single event or location, but as faint echoes scattered across vast datasets separated by time, frequency, and direction. This distribution made them difficult to isolate, yet it also made coincidence less convincing. Random noise tends to average out over time, but these traces return just often enough to demand attention. As analysis deepened, a troubling realization emerged. The methods used to filter noise were optimized for efficiency, not openness. Algorithms were designed to suppress anything unfamiliar, reinforcing existing knowledge rather than expanding it. In doing so, they risked discarding precisely the kinds of signals that might represent new phenomena. Debate grew over how far interpretation should go. Some argued that imposing meaning onto weak patterns invited bias, turning curiosity into projection. Others countered that refusing to explore the unknown guaranteed stagnation, because discovery often begins at the edges of certainty. The challenge was not proving intent, but deciding whether the patterns warranted preservation rather than elimination. What made the moment pivotal was the recognition that listening itself is an act shaped by expectation. By defining noise too narrowly, humanity may have trained itself to ignore forms of order it does not yet recognize. The universe had not necessarily changed, but the way it was being heard began to feel incomplete. In that uncertainty, the focus shifted from what the patterns meant to what it meant that they were almost lost at all. The conflict intensified as researchers grappled with the consequences of treating the patterns seriously, because doing so required challenging the very systems designed to make modern astronomy possible. Data volumes had grown so vast that human review was no longer feasible, and trusting algorithms was not optional, it was foundational. Questioning those filters meant questioning how much of the universe had already been reduced to silence by efficiency. As experimental approaches emerged, teams began preserving raw data rather than discarding it, allowing anomalies to exist without immediate explanation. This shift slowed analysis and increased uncertainty, but it also revealed how much context had been lost in earlier methods. Signals once flattened into static regained texture when viewed without expectation, suggesting relationships that only appeared when noise was allowed to remain visible. Skepticism remained strong. Patterns without repetition or clear origin could not support extraordinary claims, and the absence of confirmation left interpretation suspended between caution and curiosity. Yet the persistence of the irregularities made dismissal increasingly uncomfortable because they continued to appear across independent systems with no shared point of failure. The deeper conflict was philosophical rather than technical. Science advances by narrowing uncertainty, but exploration begins by tolerating it. By filtering too aggressively, humanity risked confusing clarity with completeness, mistaking silence for absence. The patterns did not demand belief, but they demanded humility. As discussions unfolded, the focus shifted away from proving the existence of a message and toward redefining what listening should mean in a universe that does not conform to human categories. The question was no longer whether the noise contained meaning, but whether humanity was willing to hear forms of meaning it had not yet learned to recognize. The climax of this story arrives not through confirmation, but through a fundamental shift in how scientists understand absence itself, because the patterns hidden in cosmic noise revealed that silence can be an artifact of interpretation rather than evidence of emptiness. The universe had not suddenly changed its behavior. Instead, humanity had begun to recognize how much meaning can be erased by the tools designed to manage overwhelming complexity. This realization reframed decades of observation. Data once treated as disposable background gained new significance, not because it proved a specific message existed, but because it demonstrated how easily unfamiliar structures could be filtered out before they were ever considered. The noise was no longer just interference, but a boundary where discovery might begin if patience replaced efficiency. In response, new listening strategies emerged that valued preservation over certainty, allowing ambiguity to exist without immediate resolution. These approaches did not promise answers, but they restored a sense of openness that had gradually narrowed as automation took control. By accepting slower progress and greater uncertainty, researchers created space for phenomena that did not yet have names. The resolution of the story lies in humility rather than revelation. Humanity's greatest limitation may not be technological, but perceptual, shaped by assumptions about what is worth hearing. When filters are built to recognize only what is familiar, they protect understanding at the cost of surprise. The universe does not adapt to human expectations, and meaning does not always arrive in recognizable forms. Today, the message hidden in cosmic noise remains unresolved, not as a failure of science, but as a reminder of its evolving nature. Listening is not a passive act. It is shaped by choices about what to preserve, what to discard, and what questions are allowed to remain open. In that sense, the most important discovery was not a signal, but an awareness of how much may still lie beyond our current ways of hearing. So what do you think? Have we been mistaking silence for emptiness all along? A message